First thing we want to do is launch PixInsight. If you've created a desktop icon, go ahead and click it. After it opens up, we will hit File and open up the stacked image that we created and saved previously. When it opens, it will open up 3 files: the stacked image and 2 files that show what was rejected in the stacking process. If you look at the top bar there, you can see the word rejection in there. We can just get rid of those 2 by clicking on the X. The next step is to apply a dynamic crop. We want to get rid of the outermost edges where the stacking may not be even. Simply drag the box a little bit bigger so we can see what we're working with. And the gray area, we can drag that down a little bit. That dark black line around is what is going to be cut off. Move the mouse to the bottom right corner and drag that up so we have this thin line going all the way around. And then click the green checkbox or check mark. And we're done with that. We can close out this process. Next, we will take this image and break it into its 3 RGB components by clicking on this icon here. In the name, you can see the letters R, G, and B near the end. The main picture, we can now minimize that and set it aside. Next, click on the ABE icon, the automatic background extractor. And in this, we want to set the box separation to 10. Now those little blue arrows on the right-hand side, click that to open up more sections. The function degree, set that to 2. And the target image correction, set that to subtraction. Click and drag the small triangle in the bottom left-hand corner and drag it to the desktop. This creates a copy of this process. Now close the process and we're going to delete it. So right click on ABE and then select delete. What this does is it saves all of those settings that we just entered. So you can right click on the new one and rename it to ABE, and that is your new ABE process. And we're going to do that with some of the other processes as well. Now we'll open up the new ABE and you can see that all of the settings we made are still there. So we're going to drag that same triangle on top of each of the open images. And what that does is it will remove the background that shouldn't be there. And you can see from the name, one of them actually says background on it. And I'll just show you what it looks like to give you an idea of what it's removing. So you can see some gradient there in this corner and down here. So we don't need it anymore, so let's hit the X button and that closes out that window. Then we will minimize the original picture, and we will do this again for the other 2 images. Click and drag the triangle and close out the background that we don't need anymore, and minimize the original picture. And then finally we'll do it for the last image. Close that one out and minimize. And then we can close out the ABE process. So these 3 pictures that are minimized, we don't need them anymore. They've been processed, and the 3 open windows are the processed copies. So let's just set these aside. In fact, we can delete them all. We'll just select them all, right click, and just delete all of these selected icons. There you go. The screen transfer functions you see up here are used quite often. So let's go ahead and set that up on yours. You just right click and check the checkbox next to them. The red one with the X turns it off. The other one, yellow and black, turns it on. And you can see it just brightens everything up. It's called stretching. Now we need to set up DBE, the dynamic background extractor. We will set the tolerance to 0.75. There's nothing to set under model parameters. We can skip that section. Under sample generation, set the default sample radius to 25. Samples per row, 10, that's good. And then the target image correction, again, we want to use subtraction. And we will do the same thing. We'll make a copy of this by dragging the triangle in the lower left to the desktop. We'll close this process. And if we get a message, click yes. Now we'll delete DBE. And we will replace it with our new one. And again, rename it. Now we'll open up the new process, and you can see all of our settings that we set previously are saved. Now we will hit the Generate button, and you can see on the selected image a bunch of small boxes appeared. Above we can see a black and gray pattern. That represents one of these little boxes. Let's zoom in to take a closer look. Use the mouse scroll wheel to zoom in. And what I like to do is start at the top and select one of these boxes. And you can see it displayed on the right-hand side, a bunch of black dots. Those are the stars. And we want to click and drag that off of the stars. The idea here is that we want to sample the background, not the stars. So we need to look at each box. And you can see in the bigger image to the right, if it's sitting on a black circle, that's probably a star. So we want to move it off of the star. And we need to do this for all of these little boxes. This part probably is the most tedious and takes a long time, but I've been told if you do this correctly, take your time and do it correctly, that your images will come out better. So let's go ahead and do that for each of these boxes. Also, if you find any that are sitting on top of the nebula or galaxy, just delete those. And we can delete them with a little red X above the image on the dynamic background extender right there. And we don't want to move them too far. We want to get a good sample across the image. And if we find that we're missing some, or we think we want to put extra ones somewhere, you just click on the image and it'll add another box for you. So let's go ahead and remove any that are on or near the galaxy here. Just click it, it turns green, that means it's selected, and hit the red X to delete it. If any of these boxes turns red, it means it's sitting on an area that is not suitable and it'll have to be moved or removed. You'll see a few of those later on in the video. This process is probably going to take about another 10 minutes or so. You can go ahead and sit there and watch it. It'll be pretty boring, or you can just fast forward. I believe we pick up again around the 16:45 mark. we will need to apply these same extraction points to the other two images. So what we'll do is we'll save off a copy of this to the desktop. Now we can hit the green checkbox and it'll execute on this image. We will set that aside. And you can see at the end of the name it added DBE. The background here, we can actually lighten it up to see what it took out. You can see a pretty good gradient that it removed. The checkbox deletes it. We don't need it anymore. As far as the original, we can minimize that and set it aside as well. We can close this process. Click yes when it asks you to, and we'll set aside the red. Now we will open up the process that we saved, and you can see all of those dots are in the same spot. Now all we have to do is just apply it. Just hit the green checkbox. And save that DBE image. Get rid of the background image. It's got background in the name there. And this one we will minimize and set it aside. And then finally we need to do this again for the last one. We need to close the process. It's still associated with the previous one, so we say yes and we open it again. Now on this one you can see in the bottom right hand corner there's 3 red boxes. It's not suitable for this particular image, probably because this is the green image and it has a lot of green background noise right there. So we'll need to move those. So we can zoom in a little bit so we can see what we're doing, and just click it and move it around until the red goes away. That looks good. And now we'll do the other ones. I'm going to find a good spot for it. Oh, right there. Okay, now we can execute that one by hitting the green checkbox. Close this instance of the DBE. And we'll minimize these and get them out of the way. See, in this one, let's take a look at the background. Yeah, I guess there's a little bit more in that bottom right-hand corner. Next, we'll use the linear fit tool to make sure that each of the RGB images are all the same brightness. We use the histogram transformation tool to test each one. Down here in this box it says no view selected. We'll just go ahead and select one of them. There's a lot of things in there. It can get a little confusing, so maybe we should delete some of these unused images. We will look at each of the RGB images one at a time to determine which is the brightest. But we need to set the horizontal scale to about 50 in order to see the peak in that lower graph. There it is. Just kind of make note of where it's at. The image with the peak to the right, the furthest, is the brightest one. So we'll compare all three. And you see in this instance, they're all pretty similar, but there's one that is just a little bit farther to the right, and that's the one that we're going to use as our reference. And that's the green one. So in the linear fit box, the reference image, we will select the green, the one with the G on there. and say OK. And then we will open up the red and the blue, and we will drag that triangle onto that image, onto each of those images individually. We will use the histogram tool again to compare the three images, and we can see that all three have the same peak. Now we can close this and close linear fit. Now we need to recombine those images using the channel combination tool under Processes, All Processes, Channel Combination. Click on the little icon to the right there to select each of those images, the red, then the green, and then the blue. And you can see near the end there's a letter telling you which is which. And this time we'll hit the circle icon. And this generates a new image with all three colors combined. Let's go ahead and give that a stretch to see what it looks like. That looks good. Now we need to create a preview for the next step by selecting this icon right here. And we're going to zoom in and try and find a piece of background that has no stars and no galaxy or nebula in it. We draw a box, make sure we don't include any stars. That looks good. Now we open the background neutralization tool. For the reference image, we're going to select our preview that we just created. Click OK. And click the square, which will apply that change. And you can see that the background had made a subtle change there. We're done with this tool. We can close it now. We can get rid of this DBE copy that we saved on the desktop. Now let's run the color calibration step. The bottom half is where you would select your background reference, and since we already have a preview for that, we'll use the same one. On the top, it wants a white reference, and we haven't created one, so let's zoom out a little bit, and we will select the bright part of the galaxy as a good cross-reference. Preview 2 is what we just created, and now we will apply that hitting the square. Now we have a good color calibrated image. We can close this process, and now it's a good idea to save our progress. Save it with a new name and make sure it has the XISF extension. And click OK on the options box. We can delete these previews as well. We don't need them anymore. Just right click on the box, on the tab, and select delete. We can also delete the RGB files. We don't need those anymore either. We've made a lot of progress, but it's been about 30 minutes, so I'm going to stop the video here. We'll pick it up in the next session.